Welcome to the CMO Spotlight. And today I'm here with Karima McDaniel, who is the President and General Manager for You by TIA.
If I could tell my younger career self anything, just to speak up sooner. I think, a lot of times you're absorbing, you're learning, you're trying, you don't know if you know as much as everyone else in the room. And I think there's so many times where I missed opportunities to really communicate the breadth of my experiences much earlier and my opinions. And I wish I had freed myself from that, of just sort of that worry of, do I know enough? Do I have enough information? And looking back, I realized I knew way more than I gave myself credit for. I wish I just had owned that. I do think that I am a really good brand builder. And so what drives that is being very insights led. I'm able to connect sort of what people are thinking and articulate that, I think, in a way that is a little bit unique. And so being able to sort of understand the underlying tension that consumers feel. And so where I think that served me is, as I've gone across categories and, I've worked on many, many, many different things, that's a skill that I can always really rely on, because it doesn't matter what I'm working on. I can really understand what is the why that someone is making a decision that they're making. And I think that is one thing that I do think is actually kind of instinctual. And so I do think that's actually a superpower of mine. So that's my professional one. I think the other one that's probably more personality based, but has served me professionally, is I am pretty adaptable and resourceful. I was very good at, I've always worked on very scrappy teams, or if I'm on a smaller team, figuring out how do I build relationships with people that could help me, and we can help each other across the organization. And so you're able to make your teams that much larger if you can sort of find those people you can be resources for each other, even if you don't have formal relationships. I think you have to put some time into building that out, but it's really served me in being able to move very quickly in oftentimes roles where I'm not fully resourced, but still being able to, get the things that I need to get done, because I'm able to sort of think very differently about how organizations are structured and figure out how I can pull broader organization to support me, even if they're not a part of my immediate team. My team, I'm always you have to ask 3 more questions than you think you need to, because usually you can get yourself much further than you think you can by really pushing yourself to ask more questions. So I really value intellectual curiosity, because I think it makes you resourceful. I think the other is really practicing having tough conversations. And I don't think it's something that people do enough. And it's not something that I'm necessarily love to do, but I've gotten very good at having very straightforward conversations where we might have disagreement, or I might, have some critique, but doing it from a place where it feels very straightforward, very clear, but not emotional. And so I think it's a skill that you have to develop, because you're inherently not going to always agree with people. You're going to have feedback, especially in a career like marketing, which is fairly subjective. Being able to give feedback to people in a way that can be received, conversations where that the person isn't trying to hurt you in some way, or manipulate you. So it's being really clear. And so this is another saying that someone taught me at some point, that clear is kind. And so you have to be clear in what your feedback is, clear in what your intention is. And it might not be popular, but at least you can have the discussion around it. And you can have disagreement in a positive way. And I think that is something that people do not practice enough. One that was a really great lesson, it was actually when I started at Roden & Fields. And so I worked on, their first new innovation in about 7 years. And so building out what a product launch looks like at that organization was a very new thing. And so you're building campaigns. And this was the campaign and the role that started right when social selling was sort of getting off the ground. I think I learned a tremendous amount, because at first we tried to take very traditional ways of going to market and bringing that into social channels, which just didn't really work. It was just thinking about how visual creative looks different in a social channel, thinking about how channels are different. And I think that was just, at that time, there was not a lot of playbooks for it. It was sort of figuring it out on the go, but it was, wildly successful beyond our thoughts at the time. But it was such a learning because you would try things and they didn't work. You would try like all these things that just did not have track records yet. And to your point of how do you show results or value, we were trying a lot of new things. And so it was just a nice sort of environment that sort of rewarded risk, which doesn't always happen. But I learned a tremendous amount in that role. And then I think starting in a very different role where I am, building a brand from scratch where you have, much smaller budgets. And so you have to be much more creative. And I have a wonderful partner in Tia, and she's so great at social. And so really being able to think differently about how I go to market with a very different resource model. And then also how do I connect with this consumer who's in a very different place. This has been a really good learning experience of how do you become really adaptable and flexible and just resourceful. And so I think it's paid off though. I mean, we're still learning, we're still new, we're still building, but it's just been such a different world starting from scratch, really. There's a quote that I always think about, and actually I kind of found this a little earlier in my career when I was like burning myself out actually. So I work very hard, and so I can burn myself out sometimes. And so I read a quote that was just said like, there's another way to exist in the world. And so like that really stuck with me because it made me think that, like I can control how I feel in certain situations. And I was kind of like overextending and like stressing myself out. And I don't have to live like that. Like I can do the things I love to do, but reshape how they show up in my life so that it makes room for, my professional life and my personal life. And so that quote is like my reminder of, okay, you need to, reset and balance. And so how do I be passionate about the career that I have and building my career even more, but then also do that in a way that supports the rest of my life.